get to do that once in a while. It's kind of fun. Thanks, everybody coming in this nice rainy day. I guess lots of farmers in the back there. I don't know, there's a couple of golfers there too. Part-time farmers, golfers. But it's a kind of a miserable day, so at least we can get some of this work done. We've got lots on the agenda, so we're already in open, so I'll just go and move to the minutes of the previous meeting. Can I have somebody? Oh, it's right here. Moved by Councilor Turton, second by Councilor Faulkner, that the minutes of the June 17, 2014 council meeting be approved as circulated. All in favor? Great. Any additional items? Anybody got additional items? No, I got one, so. Harry has one.
Come on, Jerry, you can do better than that, my friend. Just one?
Okay. Moved by Councilor Caldwell, second by Councilor Hammond, the town of council, Minto Council convenes in a committee of adjustments. In favor? This one here. Yep. Okay. It's a public hearing to officially open the public hearing, and any decision reached by the committee today cannot be used to set a precedent. Each application considered by the committee is dealt with on its own merits, and no two applications is exactly the same. This public hearing is to consider a revised minor variance application, file number A714, Aidan Martin. I'll chair the meeting, but I'll call on the Secretary Treasurer to state the purpose and effect of the application, date notice was sent.
Thank you, Mayor Bridge. This is a revised notice. We have held the first part of the public hearing as required by the Planning Act, so we're now into subsequent notices. We did send out notices to landowners. It did state on the notice 5 p.m., but the three principal people involved were called and asked if they could come in at 3 o'clock. The 5 p.m. notice was an error, so 3 p.m. is the time that we're able to move into this, because we're dealing with people who have already appeared on the application. So I'll just read the purpose and effect, if I can, Mayor Bridge. To consider a proposed liquid manure tank with an MDS2 setback of 430 feet or 131 meters to the nearest neighbor's dwelling, revised from 76.2 meters or 250 feet. Section 6.17.2 of the town zoning bylaw requires a minimum MDS setback to the nearest neighbor's dwelling of 602 feet or 183 meters. I mentioned how the revised notice was given. That included notice to the Maitland Valley Conservation Authority and the Wellington County Planning Department. The Town of Minto staff met on the revised application, and the recommendation is that the report be received. It just, in the town staff comments, it just goes through the process by which the Conservation Authority was informed of the revised location, and there's an opportunity later on for the chief building official, the applicant, and for the neighbors to speak, so maybe we can give some more information at that time. The county indicated they reviewed the revised application. They have no concerns with the relief requested, provided that the committee is satisfied that there are no alternate locations on the site to accommodate the proposed manure tank. That's more or less the position they had taken on the first proposal, so they've reiterated that in their July 3rd report. Council has a copy of that. Conservation Authority is outlining that the proposed 131 meter setback sites the tank directly outside the floodplain based on their review of resource mapping. As such, the revised application conforms to section 3.1 of the provincial policy statement with the Conservation Authority's one zone floodplain policies in general made under Ontario Reg 164-06. So they had no further concerns on the application. There is a comment here that it is their understanding, based on discussions during the June 24th site meeting, that a 15-meter setback from the floodplain was proposed for the tank. MVCA requires that the tank be placed a minimum 6 meters from the floodplain staked on site. As such, prior to issuance of a municipal permit, building permit, MVCA requires a site plan be submitted for their review and approval that locates the manure tank at least 6 meters from the floodplain. Did receive a letter July 8th from Mr. and Mr. Ronald Blair and Margaret Blair. See, the Blairs are here today. You have copies of the letter. I wasn't inclined, Chair, to read it unless you wish me to read the whole letter. I believe he would have an opportunity to address that as well. He goes through some of the background on how we got to this point. He questions whether the variance is minor or not, given that the variance is still from 602 feet to 430 feet. He talks about precedents and whether there were any other manure tanks that were as close as this one. He refers to excerpts from the MDS requirements, county planning opinion, that notes there wasn't a site visit conducted by the county staff. Questions whether this is the fairest or best location on the property. The revised location is in fact the best one. He notes that it is an improvement, but he doesn't sought to stress to the, we have sought here to stress the significant interest, both non-economic and economic, we have in the matter, and also point out to other possibilities than the one proposed. He did also ask that he receive notice of the decision.
Right. Okay.
Can I ask for a copy of that letter? I did not receive it.
Did you not get one?
On the desks?
No,
On
it
your-
wasn't
no,
on
it wasn't
the-
on your desk? Snipers.
Everybody else
I've
have
read
it?
mine, to be honest.
I've read mine.
Thank you.
So we'll get a copy for you.
Did you get one? I got one. Did you get one? It's really.
And now if we can have, maybe the applicant would like to, Eden, did you want to say a few words? I can just get you to move the mic, Eden, there over to you. Our technology is a little bit, there we go.
Yes. We come to this point, we acknowledge, with our revised application, we come up with, from our prior and our proposal was probably a little bit on the negative side for especially even a big impact on the neighbor's behalf, and we did get to realize after we had the Maitland Valley Conservation Authority out that it definitely was in a floodplain, which would have put a big impact on that situation too. And so we decided to move our proposed location in behind the barn on the south side, out of the prevailing winds and out of the floodplain. And I think from what I was mentioning to Blair's, that's where we were proposing after. It's going to be a significant cost factor on top of that by approximately 40,000 versus going on a gravity flush, but it's still going to be pumped, and it's going to be pumped in from the bottom, and there's always going to be a crust on top, and we're going to have the tank set back in behind the barn, and I feel all the prevailing winds, and it's really, for our position, it's where we want the tank and to make it work. If it goes further in the field, it's likely going to end up catching prevailing wind. It's going to likely make it worse, and that would put it right in a productive field, and putting it closer to the bungers would affect for further projects, and we have to leave room for for projects like hay storage and our bunks, and then behind the bunks, it would affect the sugar shack, right beside the sugar shack. And we want to make sure the maple syrup tastes sweet too when we're doing that. So, but I'm acknowledging, I think, their understanding, and we want to be neighbors for them, and I hope they can understand. And we want to, as I said from the start, take care of our legwoods, that we can accommodate that in a good manner, and have them not running off the manure yard, so we can contain it in the tank. Otherwise, I'm not sure if I got a lot more to say. We had Dave Turner out and talked to Mary Lou Caldwell, and I had a good discussion with her, and I think their understanding, and with Dave out on site, just from seeing a photo of it, I think he got a pretty good, and if he's got any comments, I'm gonna let him speak on the behalf too.
Well, I'll ask the committee right now if they want to comment, but while we have Aiden here, we'll wait till Terry.
I'm just wondering, is this on the screen here, is that the blue dot is your proposed site now?
Yeah, the tank was originally proposed up here. It's being moved to this location here, about 24 feet from the solid linear wall. And this red circle, that looks like a circle, is the actual MDSR.
Okay.
So if he was to comply,
You'd have to be
it
up
would
there.
be outside,
Right.
outside that area.
Thought that was one of those.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Bridge. Aiden, yeah, I had a nice visit with Aiden out at his farm, and I really think that by putting this tank here, he's doing a much better job of being a good land steward. He's getting all the manure inside, and but from what he explained to me, by pumping the water and manure in underneath, the crust that forms on top will certainly make it much better as well. So, and I know that I'm not really sure whether any liquid manure made it down to the river or not, but this will certainly make it much better. So,
Councillor
Through you,
Faulkner.
Mayor Bridge, I thought the original Maitland Valley Conservation floodplain came about slightly east of that blue, the blue dot. Yep, I'm pretty sure it did.
Yeah, we met on site with Steve Jackson.
Terry, maybe you should come up, sorry,
You're fine there, Aiden.
Met on site with Steve Jackson and Brandy Walters from Maitland Valley, and they actually physically pinned the location of the floodplain on the property. So their mapping that they had before was just generic.
Oh, okay.
They take high points from, I think it's 80 meters, kind of is what they base their contours on, so this
That
location.
concerns me, actually. That concerns me, actually, that original reports we would get would be generic.
That I was gonna say, I can't comment
Yeah.
on how they do it, but yeah, basically we met outside, or on site. They pinned the location, we're actually about 30 feet further away from the floodplain than what their minimum standard would be.
That's outside their standard.
Yep.
Any other questions? We have Terry here too, so. Mary Lou, did you have?
Oh, I
No,
don't
you're good.
know.
I did speak with Dennis Harper this morning, and he was happy with the revised location. He was the other adjacent landowner that
Okay.
came. And I also did speak to an inspector from CFIA about the distance from a liquid manure tank to the sugar shack. The sugar shack is that white structure on the bottom left there.
You could point that out maybe.
right behind.
Over here, okay, yep, okay.
And they said they don't have any required setback from a sugar shack, but they want to keep them as far away
Makes
as
sense.
possible, so, for obvious reasons.
All right, any more questions for?
Nope, that's good.
Thank
Okay,
you.
perfect.
And the Blairs are here. Mr. Blair, did you want to make some comments? We have your letter. I think everybody's read it now. Sorry about that, Mary Lou.
Thank you. I will attempt to be brief. I have myself not spoken to Dennis Harper because he's been very, very busy.
Okay.
He was most concerned.
I know.
That's why he came to see me and
Yeah.
so on. So now I hear he's happy with it. He didn't express happiness, I can say, when he spoke to me.
Maybe.
Not the word that he used, but anyway. I'll be as quick as I can because my points are directed to kind of broader issues that are of concern, and I think should be of general concern. As you know, that original proposal is shot down, so there was no question of it going there. Our objection was that it shouldn't have been there in the first place because it was far too close. It was going to have a very detrimental effect upon us in a
Right,
variety
and
of ways.
I think everybody recognized that.
Well, I wasn't sure that it was fully recognized because there was nothing in the documentation that gave any recognition to it at all.
But we revisited it.
Yeah. And so I'm mentioning that consideration should be given to people like Margaret and myself who are not versed in the minutiae of bylaws, zoning requirements, and this comes up once in a blue moon. How are we to know? And it's not enough to say, well, you come to the Committee of Adjustment, because it's over in a sense by that point. You need to have the information. Now, in many jurisdictions in Ontario, there is an information session beforehand. And I suggest that you should consider ways in which you could inform and explain to affected parties what is at stake. Because we had to sort of work through the labyrinth of minor and MDS to discover that no one can really explain these matters properly anyway. I would invite you to give me a clear explanation of what a minor variance is. It's very obscure. So at what point does minor become major? Is reducing what is supposed to be a requirement in setback of 600 feet by 200 feet, is that 1/3? Is that just a minor matter? Or is minor a different meaning altogether? So we get into this business where we're saying, we don't really understand this, and no one is speaking to us to tell us about it. And the documentation, the report that you received from the clerk's assistant, the report from the junior planner, made absolutely no reference to the fact that adjacent to this farm was a property that had existed for 140 years separately and was a non-farm property. And therefore, you should give very serious consideration to the effect of any development upon that. And yet, there was nothing. Nor was there any clear explanation given as to why there were no alternate sites. Although, in fact, documents, I can cite them, say this is what you should consider as alternate sites. Now, I have now heard for the first time an explanation as to why an alternate site might not be valid. I have never heard anything about any other instance, and this is not precedent. Precedent is a different matter. I see this as someone who spent 35 years studying the Constitution of Canada, so I know a bit about precedent. I was looking for comparable instances. I don't think there are any where a liquid manure tank was placed in proximity to another residential dwelling. So this is the dearth of information that I'm talking about. Now, obviously, this is a better proposal. And Aidan has explained why it makes sense to be there on the south side, which is a lot better than when I look out from my bedroom window and also my study, where I'd be looking down at the top of a liquid manure tank. That's not exactly something that will appeal to anyone. And it's all very well to say, yes, this is going to cost. Businesses have costs, including farming. It will cost us too, because ours is a dwelling which, if it ever comes to the market, people will buy for other reasons, because they want peace, quiet, country, etc., etc. And that's what we've had for 30 years. So I'm raising these questions and saying, listen, if someone comes along and you throw at them minor variants, you know, MDS2, let them know what this is all about. But I do wonder, from my careful reading of these matters, if anyone really does know what it's about. Thing is, these are rules, they're a bylaw. Laws are there to be observed. A certain discretion is permissible. It may surprise people to know that the bylaw that we're dealing with here comes under the governance of the Constitution of Canada and the Charter of Rights, believe it or not. So one has to be cautious. The preamble there says we're found on the principle of the rule of law. The rule of law doesn't mean you just monkey around any old way with it. It means you stick to it. So that's what I had to say. Listen, we've had, and I think Aidan would say the same, we've had good relations, decent relations, a long time. This was thrown at us, and it upset us. At our age, we don't want any more upset than we have already got. And so we don't wish, you know, we would never dream of interfering with a farming operation. Aidan Martin and his family are superb farmers. They have several farms, and very diligent about it. So there's no question of that. We're not kind of the kind of country dwellers who come and complain because they smelt manure somewhere. But on the other hand, we have to protect our own interests. And our interests are also economic. There is a principle, and I'll end with this, in economics, where you talk of externalities. There was an interesting example 2 days ago in the Globe and Mail editorial, to a judge on refugee health costs, where they said this will save money. But it wouldn't, because you're simply shelling the money out somewhere else. Or you say in Toronto years ago, we won't put in an escalator in the subway, it'll save money. So you had far more problems in the end. You're just moving the cost out. So you do this, well, the cost comes back to us in part too. That is all I have to say. Thank you for giving me a hearing on this. I
Thanks,
hope you
Mr.
haven't
Blair.
been bored to death.
No, you've been very
If
articulate.
I refer to the Charter of Rights, section 15, it refers to cruel and unusual punishment. And no one should be subjected to it,
Right.
it says. So I hope I haven't done that.
I guess if I'll open it up to the council, Deputy Mayor Chris.
Mr. Blair, I'm just wondering, are you reasonably happy with this location, or do you feel it needs to be the full 602 feet?
In an ideal world, I think it could be pushed back, because these things are pushed back into tilled fields, well away. They are. Once you start pumping, you pump anyway. But, you know, we're not going to go to the wall or fight to the death or any other cliches over this. We're disappointed the way it was dealt with in the first instance. And I think we could have been better informed. But are we going to live with it if this is what happens? Yes, there's no question that we will. And that's for the committee to decide. You have these massive powers that we put. Oh, yes, you do. You do.
We do.
you know,
And we have to take it seriously.
that we innocents are subjected to, see? So are you saying that we did not do a good job of informing you as to the
There was
process?
Dr. Frisk, there was no information given to us before we received the notice of the hearing. And one day, you heard this one before, one day Aidan did appear, but he appeared to hand me a document which he wanted faxed, which is something we do periodically for him. And I think there was also a little exchange about the weather. And this is at our back door. And he said something about liquid manure. Now, I know as much about liquid manure as I know about moonshots and things. So I didn't really take it in. Now, I think Aidan feels that or did feel at one point that he had consulted me through that, through the mention of it. No, 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 that's not. So until we got the document saying, here's a meeting, no one had spoken to us or said, listen, there's going to be a minor variance, it's going to be biggie, and so on and so forth. Nothing was said. And that's why I'm saying it might be a good idea in the future, if you have cases, to make sure that the affected parties are in the know. Because they're like me, they may not know anything about a minor variance.
Yeah. So we're probably making assumptions that we shouldn't make in situations like this.
Indeed. Thank you. Took the very words out of my mouth.
Mary Lou?
Just a little in defense, though, we're not sure sometimes if the parties do have any concerns. And when you did receive the public notice, did you call with questions that went unanswered, or were you dealt with, like, did you have questions that you asked the staff? And
I spoke, I received, when I came, I got a copy of the aerial picture showing this. I didn't get a lot of information, really. I didn't see the detail in the application form, for example, so I don't know what was in there. But you see, that's where you're putting the onus, Councillor Caldwell, in the wrong place. The onus shouldn't be on me. The onus should be, it seems to me, on the public authority to say, listen, these are our constituents. Make sure that they know what's at stake here. If there's something treacherous, because here we're asking for a big thing here. We were wanting to cut from 602 feet to 250. That's a massive, in a very questionable location, too. Now, you know, I'd look at that and say, red flags. Let's check to make sure. But as I say, if you go to other jurisdictions in this province, and under the Planning Act, you will find that it is commonplace to hold sessions prior to the formal session in which consultation occurs and information is transmitted.
And Mayor Bridge, just to be 100% clear here, we're dealing with a process set out in the Planning Act. The council is acting as a quasi-judicial body, so
Yeah.
it's making its decision. Procedures that were followed were exactly as set out in the Planning Act. The term minor variance comes from the Planning Act.
Oh, yeah.
When stating that there is an application for a minor variance, it doesn't state whether it is a minor or not. That is for you to decide based on the preponderance of evidence that you get from the applicant, the agencies that come forward, and the neighbors. And I think that, I want to make it clear, first of all, anyone had access to all our staff. You had conversations with several of our staff people over the application, and we gave out whatever information we could have, had available to you. And second of all, with the two hearings, I think that council has got an abundance of information. And it's true that most people don't know about these things, but that's the process we are faced with. I am not aware of a jurisdiction when it comes to a minor variance that has a pre-application screening process for minor variances. They might for official plans and zoning bylaws, which are totally separate sections of the Planning Act, but not for minor variances. I understand what's being said here, but I wanted the council to be assured that we have followed the procedures as set out in the Planning Act for this type of application.
No, I did not question that you had not followed the procedures. That was not, I wasn't saying.
No, I don't think, I understand.
I didn't suggest that at all. What I'm suggesting was maybe as an act of charity on the part of Minto authorities, you could, because you said yourself just now, Mr. White, that it's up to the committee or council, you know, it's all the same thing, to decide whether it's minor. Well, where does that leave someone like myself? Did we know that beforehand? I didn't even understand that when I came to the office and sought information. It is, you must agree, a very strange thing where you look up the dictionary and it says minor of lesser importance, and then you come and it says minor, it's whatever we decide. Oh, well, this is-
And
this is very
I
tricky.
guess we can articulate that a little bit
Anyway,
more.
so I'm taking up too much of your time.
Well, I just want to point out too, and I think the process somewhat worked, because when we, even though maybe you didn't feel you got the information quite as much as you should, and whether we dicker about a minor variance, I know that's the only word we have to use, and there's some that it'd only be a foot, and that's a minor variance, and there's some where this was 300 or 400 feet, and it's still the same, according to the Planning Act. But what I think we got out of this, and I feel good about the council and what we've done, is we've heard both sides, we've had 2 hearings on it, and hopefully, it's not a perfect solution, because sometimes there isn't perfect solutions for everybody, but it's a better solution we had the first time, and I think, I feel good about that it works better for everybody, so.
The first time it got kiboshed by the Maitland Valley Conservation Authority.
Well,
said-
but
they
there
were
only one step.
They said
But-
no.
But that's one
They-
step, but the point is, that's why we put all those
Yeah.
people in place, because we have to rely as this council, and I can't tell you if I know all the planning act as far as Maitland Valley and whatnot, but we have to rely on our people and them to come up with what their reports are. We have to make a final decision, somebody has to make that. We try to make an informed decision as best as possible, so. I appreciate what you've actually added to the process, because you've had some good opportunity to give us some good information in the process, and you've done it really well, so thanks for your input, but I think we've tried to follow the policy as best we can.
I appreciate that.
Thank you.
I shall now retreat back to the 6th
No
line.
Mayor Bridge, if there are any other questions or comments for committee, you should probably try and
Yep, right
achieve
now.
those now, otherwise we can deal with, I have 3 resolutions to approve, deny, or modify, so it's really up to committee which one you would like me to bring forward.
Okay. Any other questions?
Okay. Mayor Bridge, again, perhaps if committee has a position on it, whether they would like to approve it as modified, want to deny it, or they want us to defer it again and find another location, I guess I need that direction from committee.
David?
I'll move we accept the new position.
Okay. Seconded by Councilor Hemley?
So, Mayor Bridge, given the motion, I would read
Yeah.
the resolution.
Okay.
That the Committee of Adjustment approves the minor variance application by Aidan Martin for property located at part lots 9 and 10, concession 6, 6489, 6 Line Harrison, Town of Minto, to permit construction of a liquid manure tank with an MDS setback of 430 feet or 131.1 meters to the nearest neighbor's dwelling, whereas subsection 6.17.2 of the zoning bylaw requires a setback to the nearest neighbor's dwelling of 183 meters or 602 feet. The condition that was asked by the Conservation Authority would be the approval of the permit.
Right.
Did you want to add that as a condition to that?
I would say so.
I think so, yes.
Up to you guys, should put them in.
So if the mover and the seconder agree, then I'll add that to that. So then it would be a question of whether the committee wanted to talk about the motion or make any changes or
Any-
vote on
Any
it.
discussion on the motion? Call the vote. All in favor? Opposed?
Mr. Chair, then, the notice of the decision will be for you to sign later on, and then you have obligations under Part 9 of the notice here.
Okay. All right. And I guess I'll state anyone wishing to receive a copy of the notice of decision to please sign the request notice of decision prior to leaving the council chambers following the meeting. Officially adjourn the public meeting. Okay. Thank you. Next one up is the, Mr. Orwell.
Thank you.
See you, Mr. and Ms. Blair. Moved by Councillor Elliott, second by Councillor Turton, the Town of Minto Committee of Adjustment convenes into the Committee of the Whole. All in favor? Yeah, Rick did. Okay, this. Yeah. So now we'll be starting in our drainage portion of the meeting. I'll chair the meeting to consider the engineer's report. If you, CAO clerk, can outline the purpose of the meeting is to consider the engineering report prepared by Dietrich Engineering Limited dated June the 20th, 2014 for drain 115-2014. Notice of the meeting, oh, go ahead, Chair. You're on for that. Right?
Yes, sorry. So we have, notice of the meeting, this is, where are we here?
Right there, number 2.
Purpose of this meeting is to consider the engineering report prepared by Dietrich Engineering Limited dated June 20th, 2014 for drain, which one is that? 115?
Yep.
-2014. Notices of the meeting were sent to 6 landowners along with copies of the report. As well, copies of the report were circulated to town staff, Municipality of North Perth, Wellington County, Ministry of Agriculture and Food, and the Maitland Valley Conservation Authority. Council was provided a copy of the report with the agenda.
And notice I'll call on the engineer to come up. Who's running this one? Mr. Dietrich.
Well, I'll start with this one.
Well-
Greg will be here to assist me.
Well, you both can sit up
Yeah,
there. You're
let's-
allowed to sit up
let's
at the
do
same
that.
time.
Thank you very much for the opportunity today to present our report on Drain 115. Have with me, as everybody knows, this is Greg Nanskaville. My name's Bill Dietrich. And today, the purpose of this meeting today is to outline and review the scope of work for this project. We're not here to discuss assessment of costs, but to review what's being planned for this project. And I won't spend a lot of time in getting into the details because Greg and staff have spent a lot of time in the field already. We've had a previous on-site meeting. We've had a public meeting on this project. And so maybe, and the reports have been circulated to all the landowners on the drain. So at this point in time, I think I'll just quickly review some of the information that's that shows up on the plan. This plan is attached to the back of our drainage report. And on this drawing here, you'll see the location of the proposed drain. What's being planned here is to install a closed or tile drainage system. It'll outlet into drain 15 down in lot 18 of concession 1, and this is in the town of Minto. With the upper end of this tile drainage system being on the upstream side or on the southeasterly side of Road 152 over in the municipality of North Perth in the Wallace Ward. This would be opposite the Bowman property. The total area that we're looking at here, being this is a new drain, there was a new drainage system. The watershed for this area was established, and there's approximately 76.3 hectares of land that will be serviced by this drainage system. The total length of the drain from the outlet in the open channel in drain 15 up to the upper end is 1,730 meters, so about 1.7 kilometers. And it consists of a 600 millimeter tile at the outlet and a 250 millimeter diameter drain at the upper end. And there's various inlets and catch basins that'll be installed along the route of the drain as well. As part of the project cost, there's also a clean out of approximately 213 meters of drain 15 included in as part of this project. There's two road crossings involved, one under the Wellington Perth County Road, as well as one under Road 152. The road crossing under the county road will be installed by the steel casing by the jack and boring method, and we're proposing to open cut the other crossing at the upper end of the drain. The total estimated cost for this project is $191,900, and this includes the construction costs, the allowances for right-of-way and damages to lands and crops that will be paid to the landowners, as well as the administration costs for this project. The cost breakdown is in the report with the schedule of assessment of costs on page 10. So maybe at this point in time, if there's any questions regarding the work that's being proposed here, from any members of council or from any of the landowners on the drain, Greg and I will attempt to answer those.
Okay. Comments from the council? Town staff? Mike, Brian, are you going to speak to this? Or? Nope, okay.
Number 5.
So I'll ask anybody in attendance that may want to speak on it. Does anybody want to speak on it? In the audience? Nope.
Number 6 in the red.
On the red one. Oh, here it is.
More across the
There's
street.
someone.
Yeah, okay. I'll ask if there's any person present wishing to add or remove the names from the petition. Okay? Any council questions or further comments?
I'll just speak on it.
Sure. Yep.
Yeah, I was one of the ones that signed the petition, and the reason for it is that this drain was installed quite a few years ago. It was a private drain, and it's breaking down bad in our property. And when it was first installed, it was supposed to be maintained by the neighbors that were involved with it. And since that time, of course, those ones are all gone. So,
Yep. Yep.
that's going to be a problem. And there's more tile draining is being done and being put into this drain. And with the breaking down in our properties, and I don't believe that it needs to be looked after, and something needs to be done with it.
Good. Great. All right. Any questions from the council? I'll state the council must decide whether or not to proceed with the project by provisionally adopting the engineer's report by bylaw or referring the report back to the engineers for modification. There's no right to appeal assessments or other aspects of the engineer's report at this meeting. These appeal rights will be made available later in the procedure. Turn to the CEO clerk.
Mr. Mayor Bridge, just to note that we do not have the bylaw to provisionally adopt the engineer's report here. We would bring it back, subject to any comments that might be received. We would be bringing it back, I guess, at the July 22nd meeting, if that's
work
what
out.
the engineers provide us with, so.
Good. Okay. I'll officially adjourn the meeting and considering the engineer's report for drain 37, 2014.
This is 115, sorry.
115, yeah, I was gonna say that wrong. Okay, 115. Good. And we have one more. It's always nice to work you hard when you're here, right?
Yeah.
So
okay.
I'll
Well,
just,
that wasn't too hard. That was
no,
pretty
no,
easy.
that's right.
We'll put Greg to work here now.
Yeah, I'll chair this meeting to consider the engineer's report. Outline the CEO clerk to outline the proposed meeting is to consider the engineer report prepared by Dietrich Engineering Limited dated June the 20th, 2014 for drain 37, 214.
Thank you, Mayor Bridge. As mentioned, we did notices to 10 area landowners along with copies of the report. Copies of the report were circulated to town staff, the Ministry of Agriculture and Food, and the Maitland Valley Conservation Authority. Council was provided a copy of the report with their agenda. The map that's provided there was just to give some more context to it. couldn't quite fit the engineer's drawing on our slide, so it's just there for reference, and that's my ugly sketch of the watershed, but you get the general idea of what we're dealing with there.
And I'll call on the engineer to provide a summary of the report. Greg, you're on board this time.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. My name's Greg Nanscaville, and I work for Dietrich Engineering, and I'm pleased to present this report on behalf of Dietrich Engineering. I think I'll start with a little bit of history on this project, briefly go through this. I don't intend to take a lot of time, but if you have any questions or would require any more detail on any aspect, please feel free to ask. Dietrich Engineering was appointed under Section 78 for repairs and improvements to an existing municipal drain that was originally constructed under a James A. Howes report in 1956. And we were also appointed under Section 4 of the Drainage Act, which Section 4 of the Drainage Act involves petitions. And these petitions that were received were asking for the construction of 2 new branches that were not originally part of the 1956 report, as well as the incorporation of a privately installed drainage system that serves more than one property. In accordance with Section 9.1 of the Drainage Act, there was an on-site meeting held with the landowners. And the purpose of this on-site meeting is to get together with the affected landowners, discuss their drainage issues, any concerns, any constraints they may be aware of, and to get an idea as to what they might want to see implemented to deal with those issues or constraints as they may be. Also at this meeting, the engineer under Section 4 is to determine the validity of any and all petitions. That was done. They were all found to be valid. Further to that, we had an information meeting, which is an informal setting. It's not a requirement under the Drainage Act, but we have found over the years that it's a valuable opportunity to get some input from some people. What we do there is we present them with preliminary drawings of our proposed design, cost estimates, individual assessments, and at that point in time, it's just an excellent opportunity to address any questions, any issues that have not been yet addressed, and if there's any changes or anything outcoming from those meetings, hopefully we can get them, most often we can get them addressed before we get here at the consideration before council. The design standard used for this system was an 1.5-inch drainage coefficient, and the proposed design is actually 7 times the capacity of the 1956 drainage system. Now if we move to the drawings, drawing number 1 of 3, the heavy gray line around the watershed boundary is actually just the delineation of the watershed basin itself for this particular project. You'll see some dash lines, some lighter dash lines. They are sub-watersheds. Sub-watersheds for each of the individual basins and such like. If we start down at the lower end, we're proposing to dig approximately 135 meters of new open ditch on the McLaughlin property. We'll have a 900 millimeter outlet pipe, that's 36 inch. Upstream of that, we'll have 825 millimeter concrete or 33 inch concrete tile up to the lot line between the McLaughlin property and the Kerr property. And there we switch to a 750 millimeter concrete and HDPE, high density polyethylene pipe. That's 30 inch from there up to the east side of the 6th Road South. Moving upstream from there across the Kerr property, we have 525 millimeter concrete or 21 inch tile. And we'll be crossing the 5th line by jack and bore method of a 600 millimeter or 24 inch steel casing. Upstream of that, we have the 525 millimeter concrete tile with a section of HDPE pipe in there. We put a section of that in the report and in the contract documents in case we hit adverse soil conditions. That way we have a contract price at the time. If there are material overruns, underruns, whatever, that'll be adjusted accordingly. And at the lot line between the Lavalette property and Pathway property, it switches to 450 millimeter diameter tile or 18 inch. and that's concrete, up to, it crosses back over into the Lavalette property, and at station 1 plus 818, it goes back into the Pathway property, and from there on up, it is a 400 millimeter or a 16-inch concrete tile. The 1956 report started down at the lower end with a 16-inch diameter tile, and at the upper end, it was a 7-inch diameter tile. Branch 1, you'll see branch 1 on the drawing there. Branch 1 is to service a subwatershed parcel of the Lavalette property, and to get its outlet into the main drain, we have to go through the Kerr property, which is part of lot 30 and concession 5. Branch number 2, that's the incorporation of the existing tile drainage system that was put in privately. As it serves more than one property, it does qualify. It can be incorporated and made part of a municipal drainage system. It starts out at its outlet into the catch basin at the upper end of the main drain with a 200 millimeter ag tubing or 8-inch, and it proceeds upstream, and then the very last portion of it before you get to the Schneider property is a 4-inch, once again ag tubing or 100 millimeter. There's a series of catch basins and the junction boxes on this. All the catch basins are concrete. I think I've covered everything pretty much on the plan, drawing 1 of 3. If we go to drawing 2 of 3, this is just the profile of the main drain. And if you're looking at these, if you're not used to looking at them, it might appear quite strange, but the smaller numbers on the top of the profile, for instance, starting down at the lower end, you'll see a number vertically, which is 2.39. That is the depth from the ground elevation to the invert or the inside of the tile system as proposed. So that gives you an idea of the depth through there. This also shows the grades. The lower end is a 0.14%, which is actually a fairly flat grade. And from then on, we have considerable grade with 0.68, 0.49, 6.3, that type of thing, with a flatter section right up at the top at 0.18. And if we go to drawing 3 of 3, it's basically the profile of branch 1, same format, same layout. Branch 2 is the approximate grade and depth of the existing system that was installed by Marquette Farm Drainage, and we got a lot of information as far as grades, depths, elevation, and cost from Marquette Farm Drainage themselves. Branch 3 is very straightforward, another profile there, and we have our typical tile drain connection on that page as well. All tile drains that are cut off in the process of installing this one will be installed, if they're a good working drain, will be connected to the new system. And we actually specify it's done in a specific manner. All holes into this new concrete tile or plastic tile have to be cored. You can't just knock a rough hole in it and throw mortar at it. They're to be cored with an insertity and backfilled under the haunches around the pipe and over top of the flex pipe with 3/4 clear stone. That avoids any crushing afterwards. It's just a good way to make a connection. So I think that covers the drawings. Now if we go to allowances have been provided under this report, under 3 sections of the Drainage Act and Section 29. Section 29 is for right-of-way and for a total amount of $21,830. Section 30 damages for a total amount of $22,330. And Section 31 is an allowance for drain already constructed in the amount of $4,580 as per invoices that we received from Marquette Farm Drainage. For total allowances under this report of $48,740. If we get into the assessment schedules, there's an individual assessment schedule for each portion of this, and a summary of assessment schedules is on page 16 or the yellow sheet. The main drain, the format is the same on all of the individual assessments. The main drain, you can see the engineer has used section 22 for benefit, section 23 for outlet, section 26 special assessment. There's a total column, less any government grants that are available, any farm, any property qualifying for the farm tax class will receive a 1/3 government grant towards the total amount of their assessment, less any allowances that they may be entitled to under this report. And then the final column over at the right is actually your net assessment. So your total assessment, if you find your property, less 1/3 grant, less any allowances that may be applicable, will give you your net assessment, which is basically your out-of-pocket expenses based on this engineer's estimate. The format is the same throughout until you get to the summary, like I say, on page 16. And this is just a summary of total costs. And as you can see, the total estimated costs for the main drain are $299,000. Branch 1 is $27,300. Branch 2 is $11,300. Branch 3, $15,700, for a total of this project as proposed here in this report of $353,300. I think at this point in time, if there are any questions, I'd be willing to entertain them. And if you, like I said before, if anyone would like any more detail on any particular aspect, please ask.
Okay, good. Garrett?
I have a question on, I guess, the original map. On the bottom right-hand corner, there's a subsurface waters drained out of the watershed. Does that mean that that water drains naturally, or is there another drain there that's taking that water away from the watershed?
Yes, actually what this means is there's been some systematic tiling done, that its outlet is actually outside of this watershed rather than in.
Just from a tile drain.
Tile drain, that's right.
Tile drained out.
Yep.
Anything else? I'll ask the town staff if you have any additional comments. No? All any persons in attendance wishing to provide information that might influence the council decision on the matters. Anybody? Lots of meetings on this, obviously, by the time it gets here. I'll ask if there's any persons present wishing to add or remove their names from the petition. Any more questions from the council? Oh, sorry, on hand. And your, Halfley, okay, where's that thing?
Which one's he?
Branch 2,
Right down the bottom.
branch 2 down here.
What was, I'm sorry, what was the question?
It
Yeah.
was discussed, right, Greg, to have that brought under the act. It was
Yes.
initiated anyways by some of the landowners to have that incorporated into that existing drain. You didn't sign it? No. Okay, well, you can sign it this evening if you wish.
I have some questions about the numbers.
Oh, okay.
Which numbers are calculated here?
Well, if you'd like to come up and speak at the mic, because unfortunately, we're on television, eh? Like it's all televised. I get comments when they hear things from the back.
I'll give you, you can have this chair here.
So state your name and what part of the, just for the,
Branch 2 is, goes through mainly through our property, lot 29. But I never signed a petition for that yet, and I'm not sure how those numbers are calculated, because that branch is only going through our property, but I'm not sure how our beneficiary is from that tile, and I'm not sure about those numbers here. That's my question.
okay.
Okay, and I think the best way to answer that question is there's 2 or 3 parts to it. The first part, the amount of allowance for the drain already constructed, the amount of $4,508 was from invoices we received from Marquette Farm Drainage. That was the actual cost of having it drained. And in bringing that under the Drainage Act, there's also some administration costs. There's also allowances for right-of-way. So that makes the overall number look larger than what you pay Mr. Marquette, or Mr. Consbury rather, to install that tile system. Having added all that together, we come up with the total cost of that branch. Total cost of branch two of $11,300. And if you look at the assessment schedule, on page 14, we have taken that total cost of $11,300 and we have assessed it out to the landowners that use that branch only. And as far as how we calculated the section 22 and section 23, how we come up with those numbers that break down the assessment, that's not what we're here to talk about today. That can be discussed at the quarter revision, which will come down the road. I think I have answered generally how those numbers came to be, and that's probably about as far as we want to go today.
Is that fair?
That's good.
Good. And you're what, is it W?
The number company, I believe, roll number 1-070, beside the Schneider property.
Beside the Schneider property? That's 57. Which property are you involved in?
Walter, Pfeffley.
Yeah, that's, okay, that's, yeah, Walter, yeah, okay. All right, so yeah, that's fine.
No.
No, it's Walter. That's why I thought it was Walter.
No. No.
Which property are?
Yeah. Yeah, it's right along.
27, 8,
Yeah.
and 9.
So is this property here?
Yeah, we are the one
Oh,
here.
okay.
Yeah.
So it does mean like,
Well, that's what I thought. That's what I thought. So it's only,
oh, yeah. So the net cost to you for the whole project is, 11,300, your cost is, $500.
okay? Thank you. That's good. Thanks for bringing that up. Okay. So he'd have to sign the petition on that part. So, okay, okay, all right.
No, he really doesn't, because it's the upstream owners that have requested it, and that will really benefit from it. And they're assessed the majority of the cost.
Majority of the
So
cost.
he could add his name to the
Right.
petition if he wants, but he doesn't have to.
Doesn't have to,
It's not a
okay.
requirement.
Okay, good,
You could add your name if you want.
Nope, and they're all in here. Good. All right, thank you. If no other further comments, council must decide whether or not to proceed with the project by provisionally adopting the engineer's report by bylaw or referring the report back to the engineer for modifications. There's no right to appeal the assessments or other aspects of the engineering report at this meeting. These appeal rights will be made available later in the procedure. And I will, CEO Clerk.
Just to say the same thing, that the bylaw adopting or provisionally adopting the engineer's report will come back at the next meeting.
And I will officially adjourn the meeting, consider engineer's report for drain 37, 2014. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming, and everybody else for coming. You can head out if you want. Yep, sorry.
One question.
Yes.
Will the assessors will get a notice in the mail at some point?
Yes. No, the report today has been accepted by council, so just I'll go through some of the procedures from here on in.
Sure.
Basically, what will happen is, once the provisional bylaw has been passed, and I believe that'll take place at the July 22nd, second council meeting, you'll get a copy of that provisional bylaw in the mail. Along with it, there'll be a notice for the quarter revision. And the quarter revision will deal with any appeals on assessment. And the court is made up of members of council, and they'll make any decision. So if you think your assessment's not high enough, or it's too high, or it's not, or if you want to pay more, you'll be given, you can put that in writing. And if you want to pay more, you can let them know. And if you think you're paying too much, you have to let the court know how much and who do you think you should, how you should have that distributed. Have it all in writing if you're going to appeal, and you'll have 10 days notice. Your appeal should be in writing 10 days prior to the quarter revision. If there isn't any appeals, the council will eventually give the bylaw third reading, and they'll authorize us to prepare the contract documents, and the project will go to construction. So those are some of the, we've still got a couple of meetings along the way here before the actual pipe goes in the ground. Okay?
Thank you. Thanks for that comment. Anybody wishing to leave Ken now?
Okay.
Oh, well,
Clear the room.
look at the time.
Okay, thanks very much.
And the council can't go. I'm not letting them, no, sorry, in case you want to leave. There goes the quorum. Oh, before they have to, you're right, Joey. Said next.
Oh, it was question period.
Where is question period? Not even on here today.
Oh, yeah, it's on there. Keep reading. Next page over, my friend.
There it is. Yep, there it is. There it is. Okay. Yeah, I know.
Mayor Bridge, should advise that Sean Armstrong
Yes.
contacted the office this morning, and they're going to make another time.
Yeah, the ambulance is busy. And at this time, I'd like to call on delegation from the Clifford Recreation Association, lighting up the ballpark. And Paul Whiteman, if you could come up, Paul. Nice to see you.
I thought Paul was here for the drains, but I guess
Oh,
not.
you know, I don't know. You can get on
We
those
can make a
drains.
drain for you.
And you have Paul's report in the file, so did you want to speak to it, Paul, or do you understand it?
Just a comment, I'm here today actually on behalf of Randy Retz, who's president of Clifford Recreation Association. As you know, Clifford Recreation has spearheaded, I believe, the project to develop the park project in Clifford. And Randy's on vacation at the moment, so he asked me to come in his place. So I guess I'm just the messenger, but nonetheless, I'll do my best to address any issues or concerns or questions. I think it's my understanding there's a one-page plan been presented that everyone has.
Yeah, we've got it all here, yeah.
And in basic terms, I believe the intent is that to do this development project, rather than dragging it out over years and years and years and raising funds in the process, that we ought to just do it, get it done, and then commit some dollars and then repay it as quickly as possible. And I think what we see in the plan is that the community at this stage has raised and willing to put forward a sum of $44,000 approximately, although there is a requirement for up to $74,000, and that leaves us with a shortfall of about 30. And so I believe what the plan is asking is that the municipality help us by giving us an interest-free loan for a period of time, and we can do fundraising and whatnot over the next few years to repay that, and then we could finish up the project and get it looked after.
Great. Any questions? Deputy Mayor Fisk.
Paul, I'm just wondering, under donations, do you actually have those funds, or those funds have just been committed and they're over a certain term?
I believe that those groups have those funds and have come together and made commitments as a group within the community to say, we have these funds we could put forward to that project. And then it's my understanding that the items below are the items that probably are extraneous to the original intent of the project, you know, to finish it up, and that we would do fundraising and whatnot over the next few years. And I think that the group has taken a conservative approach, to be honest. I think that 5 years to repay 30,000 should be fairly straightforward for the community.
And the other question then is, there's a installation of $20,000. What is that, the installation of?
I have no clue.
Okay.
I believe,
Al
is it the
Al's in
lights?
the back. Al, do you want to come? Yeah, please come up, Al, because you're involved with this project. And in fairness to Paul, although he initiated and helped get started on this, he hasn't been right involved with it.
No,
I'm sorry, Paul, I should have joined you.
that's fine.
Back to your first question, Deputy Mayor Fisk, they do have a bank account, and it's, right now, they're looking at approximately $30,000 is, most of it would include the installation, some of it would include the product.
So that's 30,000 of the 44,000 in the bank account?
They have spent some money on fencing.
They've already got it up.
Okay. And then the installation, do you know what that's for? What installation of
The
the fence?
installation includes the service, as well as the installation of the poles and wiring.
The hydro service.
That's correct, yes.
Okay, thanks.
Anything else?
Mr. Mayor, I think I suggested this a while back to the committee when we were together on a group that the Northern Theater had done that in the past, and I think it's important if you're going to build something, you get it up and get it running, and do it properly at a speed, expedite it and get it done in a hurry. I see no problem with your committee raising that over 5 years, and as the Northern Theater Board, it appears that we're going to pay down our debt earlier too, so, but it is good to put that distance, and I would support what you're doing.
Yeah, we take a motion on it. Moved by Councilor Elliott, second by Councilor Caldwell. I just want to point out, I've been working with this group as well, and they're just all positive people up there and working hard at it. And the facility is going to be next to the best one around, I think, when you get it said and done.
Clifford gets everything.
I know, I know.
We work hard
But
for
they
what
did,
we
they did a
got.
lot of, they did a lot of work to get this there, and we're very happy that we're going to actually have a tournament up there, a provincial qualifier for the squirts, and I think we're trying to make arrangements to have some of the swing skirts come out and throw a ball at me or something. I hope they don't hurt my
Trying to get
hand.
as many as possible.
But we're getting as many as possible to have an opening, so I would hope everybody can come to that. But I certainly support this project, and again, the positive attitude that we have up in Clifford, so.
You get a good group there, Paul.
Yeah.
Good job.
Thank you.
Anyways, so, we have a vote on that now? We have a motion? All in favor? Carried. Thanks, Paul.
Thank you.
Now, you just have to work on Gord to cut the check.
Okay. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Paul.
Yeah.
Thanks, Paul.
Okay. And Linda's here. A large, long report. Like, how long did it take you to write this? Oh, it's great. That'd be
Not as
really-
long as it's probably gonna take us to go, no, just kidding.
Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor. Can you hear me? Thank you, Mayor Bridge and members of council. Yes, I apologize, there's quite a few items here, but given the year, I'm trying to get as much done prior to the
Yes.
fall as we can.
Yep.
So I believe the first report that you have in front of you is the emergency management report. And this is the annual report that I put together every year, sort of just to summarize for council what's gone on, what's transpired in terms of primarily the requirements under the legislation, the Emergency Management and Civil Protection Act. And then also to ask for you to give consideration to it as conducting a review of our program as also required. So just to highlight a few of the things, program committee, we did meet on March 5th. I'll talk about the emergency response plan as I do have an amendment, but it has been reviewed as required. Training, not all the training's completed as of yet. We did run a basic emergency management course in April, and we've got some upcoming training, but that kind of gives you an idea of what's been held and the dates that are coming forward. I did put a note there. What we've done in the past is when we have, after the election, we'll host an elected officials course. It can be a review course. It can be for new elected officials that want to learn a little bit more. And we'll look at hosting that early in 2015. Exercises, we held our annual exercise very early this year. At our meeting, and given the flood outlook that was anticipated, given the snowpack this year, we felt it was prudent to have an exercise based on that kind of scenario. And it was more of a discussion-based exercise. And I think all in all, it was a good exercise from a prep point of view. There were some things done ahead of time, kind of informing the public about things that they can do, as well as I believe there were some procedures that were put in effect when we did have some flood warning messages issued through that time. So I think some of that did come into, and it will move forward, and we'll update our plans accordingly with that. Critical infrastructure, one of the things we've undertaken in the last year, we've talked about it for a while, but we've compiled a critical infrastructure group from the water and wastewater side of things, and it's representatives from across the county. The staff that have been involved in it are very receptive to it. They like the idea of that networking, getting together. They're doing a lot of talking and how they can improve upon things, how they can work together, whether just on a day-to-day basis or in the event of an emergency. And we're looking at considering some countywide training, which kind of ties into our whole interoperability theme for that group later this fall as well. Public education, our main theme this year, given what we went through last year for Minto in terms of the ice storms in April and then again in December, and just our debrief from that and the fact we need to keep on with the resilience piece and making sure that our communities are resilient to these kinds of situations, as I believe they're probably going to become more and more the norm than not the norm. And so we had the theme of power outages, and you can see we did a number of events throughout the course of primarily May, which is our main public education period. And the main theme for most of that was power outages, and we did give away a generator, and the lucky recipient was a resident from Center Wellington. So. And that sort of covers the main pieces that are in the legislation under the regulations. There are some other things that are housekeeping that we do on a regular basis, but those are the main pieces. And then under enhancements, and I'll talk about our interoperability program in a minute, in which Chief Harrow is also part of our steering committee, and I'll talk about that report in a minute. Hazard identification and risk assessment. It's part of the legislation, and it's sort of the foundation and a requirement that the province has stipulated that every community does. A lot of our hazards are similar across the county, but we do have some unique ones, particularly flooding for Minto. Mapleton and Minto are the two that really see the flood issue. So this review was more of a quantitative. The last one we did was more of a subjective kind of review that was done 10 years ago. This one has a quantitative piece to it, but generally speaking, you can see, I think for the most part, our risks stayed very similar. Floods were still relatively high. We've added special events. Hazard transportation events were rated slightly higher, but I think that's because of the number of highways and county roads through the township, or through the town. Tornadoes, windstorms are still noted, and of course, freezing rain events were added. And snowstorms, blizzards have been rated slightly lower. So that's sort of how that has, and we use that in terms of our whole planning and our programming. I've added the planning for extreme heat events in here as well too. Another weather event. In the past, we've sort of been very reactive to the issuance of heat advisories from Environment Canada issuing a humidex warning, and then Public Health saying heat advisories. And they've also taken a much different approach as well. They're wanting to take more of a proactive approach and say, we don't want to react to everyone, we want to react to more of the prolonged events. And so that's really what the approach that we're taking this year. So we'll be looking at a more proactive approach in terms of if something becomes more prolonged and working closely with them. And they are taking a proactive approach in terms of public education on heat, more so than the municipalities from a health perspective. So that's sort of the approach with heat this year. And then strategic planning, looking at having some kind of strategic planning, maybe later in the fall, maybe next year, but looking at it from a countywide perspective, and some of the issues that came out of our debriefs from the ice storms, and how do we want to approach things like warming centers, cooling centers, and things that may be much more countywide in perspective. So we'll be looking at that as well. And that sort of is, well, that's the report from the program report is presented.
Questions?
Yes, I had a constituent approach me about the fact that our sirens, our town sirens are no longer in use. How would the residents be notified in the case of, say, a tornado, other than public media, which in the case of tornado was nearly fast enough nor appropriate?
Well, and I think that's an issue, and we've talked about the sirens, and we talk about it quite frequently at a program committee level, and I think we talked about it for the flood exercise, and actually that we would do some public education for the fire vehicle being a means of a siren noting that there's a flood. The issue with the sirens, and it varies across the province in terms of how people look at it. And my concern from that perspective is that this municipality may say, well, this siren's for this event, But then this municipality, like Elmira, uses the siren to warn of a hazardous incident at Kamtura. So to me, if you're going to look at it, you've got to do very strategic public education with the siren, because if they get to know that it's for this here, but what happens if they go someplace else? Are we setting them up for not understanding what's really meant by what the siren? I know out of Goderich that there were some recommendations out of the report from the inquiry of that, and the province was going to take a more provincial approach on it, but at this point in time, that's kind of died as well too, in terms of how we use sirens. So it's a good tool. I mean, it's very loud and you can hear it, but we have to be very strategic, I think, in terms of how we use that particular tool, and really try and make sure that if we do implement it, there's a good education piece in place for it. And it can only really be used for one kind of situation. You can't use it for all.
And is there anything in the works to come up with some sort of other notification tool other than the siren to?
For tornadoes in particular?
I'm talking primarily tornadoes, because there is only a matter of minutes normally.
Tornadoes are a tough one, because there are times when we don't even get warning and it's on us, right? Even, as you said, Environment Canada in their forecast, sometimes they'll often say severe thunderstorm warnings. And the thing to look with thunderstorm warnings is that you have to be very cognizant of that any time. Even light tornadoes, like the one that went through a couple of Tuesdays ago, wasn't as heavy as the one before, but that's the one that spawned the tornado near the Tottenham area. But there were no tornado warnings in that particular one, but that's something to be caught. And that's just part of our public education piece, is that people need to be aware when you get that kind of weather, that just be on the lookout for those situations.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Just one comment I had, and I had a taxpayer ask me this, because there's so much in the news, and of course, we just had, unfortunately, the one-year anniversary of the train accident in Quebec. And they're seeing lots of big trucks going through, and actually in particular, we have the liquid gas trucks now. They come out of Mount Forest, or outside of Mount Forest, and they come right through our town and through Clifford. And is there going to be, I know they talked about it from the train standpoint, is there going to be any kind of legislation coming down to sort of any hazardous truck operators that are constantly going through? I mean, you know, an odd one here or there, but is there anything in that, or that they're going to identify that kind of thing? Just so we know, so if Chris has to have a certain, we know a certain kind of vehicles coming through, if there's an opportunity that we have to have special training or whatever for it, I don't know.
I'd have to take a look at the legislation again, because I haven't really.
Okay, because it just tweaked me when you had the hazardous waste thing, and I just
Yeah, the
wondered
fire
about that.
departments in the south, where they have the railways, are taking a closer
Yeah.
look, and it's hazardous transportation, but I'm not aware of any.
You know anything, Chris? Nothing, not, yeah?
No, there's nothing on the books for.
Okay.
It's in relatively small quantities.
Yeah.
One transport truck is a lot smaller than a
Yeah.
56 to 100 car train derailment, so it's really not, it's not an issue on their issue, and we're trained to deal with
Okay.
one truck. So
All right. I think just we'll get that out to the person then, because they see these trucks going by their house all the time, and now with all this publicity about, you know, hazardous waste and whatnot, so.
Well, it is one of the things that I said was identified, added to our list, so
Yeah.
it's something that we
Okay.
can take a look at and definitely do some exercises and other
Yep.
things on from a
Good.
municipal perspective.
Thanks, Linda. We have a recommendation that the Council of Town of Minto accepts the annual emergency management report, and that further that the report serves as annual review of the town's emergency measures program for 2014. Motion, Councillor Faulkner, Councillor Turton, all in favor? Okay, thank you. And now you're going to do another one, right?
I've got two more, yes.
Two more.
Next, they'll fairly quick.
Oh,
I
they're
think.
quick.
So the second report, which is sort of attached to and accompanies the program report, is the interoperability report, and it's just an update. And I've talked about this for a number of years, how we've had a group that was formed. The City of Guelph was looking at some funding initiatives, which they received. They included the County of Wellington in that as well. The study has now been completed, and it was reviewed by the steering committee, which includes representatives from the Guelph Police, Wellington County OPP, fire in the City of Guelph, EMS. as well as the county coordinator and the assistant coordinator, which is Chief Harrow as well, as part of that steering committee. So we looked at it, and I would say it's a very high-level document. There were some recommendations, which I've noted in here, that were put forward, but we've taken the approach in the county that we're adding to that, and we've created our own steering committee in the county, again, made up of the inspector. Chris has sat on it, and a representative from Center Wellington Fire, and we may change that steering committee up as we move through, but we talked about ways that we have interoperability already in the county, and I think fire training officer is one of the good examples of that, with the training levels that we've achieved through consistency throughout the county. Our radio communication project that we had a few years ago with EOCs and fire stations. Fire departments are trying to become more interoperable in terms of their radio systems, and exercising, whether it's through training and multi-agency ones, and we often have try and do field exercises as we can, and we did do one in Center Wellington this year where we had a number of agencies come together. So we've got a lot going on, but we feel there's still room to improve. And one of the things we thought that would be good would to bring the three groups together and have a training session on how we do this and why we do this, and then one of the other agencies do the similar scenario. And we held that on June 12th, and it was very well received. So we're looking at doing more in the future. So Chris can maybe comment on it, but it was well received. So
Through you, Mayor Bridge, this is an age-old issue with me, is that there's been many major catastrophes and events where the biggest problem is communication between departments, and particularly fire, EMS, and police. And for some reason, somebody's been able to keep the kibosh on having a communication system where everybody can communicate with everybody. And is there any progress in that area at all?
from all three, across all three, no.
Isn't that
No.
sad?
But I think the thing too, when we talk about interoperability, and the technology is just one piece of it. And when we were doing this report, a lot of them were talking about, they talked about the technology, but we had boots on the ground individuals that were part of the initial study, and it wasn't just that. Interoperability talks about governance, so the piece
Absolutely.
of having that, but how we use it together. Do we train together? Do we do exercises together? Do we understand how each other works? And I think that was part of the rationale behind having this training session in June, just to pilot and see how it went, and it went very well. So to continue those and to keep working through training and exercises, yes, the technology may not link, but I think in the future is if we continue to do that, there'll be better interoperability because we'll understand each other. And if something does happen, one may say, hey, I heard about that. And that's not the way it works. And there might be that willingness to not just keep plugging ahead, but stop and take a look. And hopefully that will help out communications in the long run. But
Hopefully is the operative word, for sure.
Yeah, the police have been really stubborn though. Isn't the police?
I think it's more fire.
I'm not gonna be ambulance.
Just need a motion to receive the report. Councillor Faulkner, Councillor Elliott, all in favor? Carried. And then number 3. One more.
Oh, sorry.
It's you.
Sorry, Mayor Bridge.
Sorry.
Okay, so as I indicated in the program report, one of the things that we're required to do annually, well, first of all, we're required to have under the legislation a response plan, and we're required to review it annually. And we do, and sometimes there's changes, and sometimes we indicate that there's not changes. This year, after our exercise that we had held, the countywide exercise last October, and also based on our experiences from the ice storm in April and December, we felt that there should be some changes to our plan. What we've done is we've taken the amendment that you have before you and went to all of the program committees in the county for review, and as we went through, we kept making changes. We then took the final document, recirculated it out to the program committees for final consultation, and that's the document that you have before you. We're coming forward to councils to say this is what we're proposing to make changes to the plan. Items 1 to 5 indicate the major changes to it. There's a few housekeeping in there as well. But if there's any questions on the changes, I'd be happy to
Questions
speak
for
to those.
Linda? Then there's a recommendation The councillor supports the adoption amendment number 2 to the emergency response plan for the County of Wellington and the member municipalities. And further, the council authorized the passing of a bylaw adopting the amendment to the emergency response plan.
Mayor Bridge, we'd have to put the bylaw on with a number next meeting,
Right,
so.
okay, so
I
that's-
could do the first half
Yep.
today.
Do that first half. Moved by Councillor Henry, second by Councillor Caldwell. All in favor? Good. Thanks, Linda.
Thank you.